Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Suzanne Lawrence. I'm the CEO of Advisor Business Solutions. We're a founding partner with the BLX internship program, and we help give really good, helpful feedback to the interns who apply to the internship program on their cover letter and their resume. We provide a lot of feedback. We probably helped hundreds of applicants on what to think about and how to improve what's written and what's included on the resumes that we receive. Most of the applicants that we have are college students, either in their junior or senior year. We also receive several applications from grads as well as career changers who are interested in helping people with their personal finances. I'm sharing this with you because many of our applicants are new to the job market, and it's really an area where you may not have as much work experience so that you can put more information on resumes. So, what we'd like to do is try to look at ways for you to expand on the experiences that you have and how to use them in a way that's going to be very professional and detailed and organized. We also want to remind you that the job market is really competitive, even for internships. So it's important for you to really think about how to best articulate and express your ideas for the type of experience you want to share and your skills, and make those a very clear and concise message and have a good presentation. So our goal is helping you today to come up with a few techniques and a few tips that will help your resumes and cover letters really stand out to a hiring manager. As Leisha mentioned, you're welcome to use the chat if you have any questions during the presentation. You don't have to wait until the end, and she'll share what the questions are with me, and we'll just go right through them. Keep in mind that if there's any areas that we're covering that you think about having a question you'd like to ask and aren't sure, just assure you there's other people in our group today who will have the same exact question, so feel free to speak up. All right, so let's get started on how to write an unforgettable resume. So for a starting point, I always want to help you to think about when you're putting your information down, what are the hiring managers actually looking for so you can be more specific on making sure that you're touching on a few areas that they're going to find helpful or important. So think about the kind of position you're applying for. If you're submitting for a position like for the BLX program, which is for getting attracted to hiring managers for financial planning experience, what kind of relevant experience might you be able to look at using to include, and what's going to be really helpful as far as the skills that you're touching on? How do you also compose your information professionally on the resume? And what might be helpful information that will show that you're a good cultural fit for the company? These are like the three components that I just want you to think about for including in your cover letter as well as in your resume. So we're going to take a quick poll. I'd like everyone to just take a quick couple of minutes to think about what is your best choice that you can select. How important is it to submit a cover letter when you're applying for a job? A, do you always submit a cover letter? B, only when requested? or C, never submit a cover letter? Everyone just take 30 seconds to go ahead and pick what do you think is your best answer for this question. And
All
we'll
right,
share.
looks like we've got everybody ready, so I'm going to display those results.
Perfect. Okay. So the majority of our groups chose always submit a cover letter, which is certainly fine. Only when requested, I would say, is also appropriate. I'm going to give you a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of flexibility here. Usually, it's not a bad practice to always have a cover letter whenever you're submitting a resume, but it's always not necessary. It just depends on if the company that you're applying for specifies it's required. So you can safely always have a cover letter. I like the idea of you always submitting one because you will get better at articulating and writing and expressing yourself in a cover letter. That's going to get more and more, maybe, attention as you continue doing it. So I would suggest always submit a cover letter as first choice, but absolutely, if it's requested, make sure you follow through. Let's talk a couple of minutes now about preparing your cover letter. What are some of the things that are really important about it? First, I want you to remember that a cover letter is your opportunity to express yourself, more so to show your personality and how that will come across differently than in your resume. You want to be able to share what your reasons are for applying for the position, and that actually reflects on how you express yourself. And that, from a manager perspective, will help to see if you're a good cultural fit for their company. It's not a replacement for a resume, it's really to complement your resume. So your cover letter is really going to be more of an opening. This is who I am. This is why I'm here. This is what interests me about the position. Whereas the resume is going to basically be more straightforward about here's my experience, here's my skills, here's my education, and my background information. So let's take a look at an example of a cover letter. This actually is an example from a candidate who applied for the BLX program. But just to give you a bit of a snapshot of the first paragraph, which really is talking about more of who they are, it's really like a personal introduction. Dear hiring manager, thank you for the opportunity to apply to your financial planning organization. I'm a graduate student in the Master's of Social Work program at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, with a community action and social policy specialization. I heard of the BLX internship program from a financial planner I was working through the Maryland Cash campaign in order to enhance my own financial literacy. Okay, so that's a personal introduction, snapshot. I'm a grad student. Here's what I'm studying. Here's an area that I also have a specialization is. That's something that a hiring manager will remember and may resonate a little differently from other cover letters that they read. Continues on. Over the last couple of years, I realized the importance of financial well-being in addressing individual and societal issues and began a personal and academic journey in being able to learn more about the topic. That's the why. Why am I here? Why am I interested in applying? So think about, what is your why if you are writing a cover letter? Why would it be helpful for a hiring manager to see you as someone who might be a good cultural fit? You're passionate about something. You want them to know this part about you. It's not going to be in your resume. Last paragraph, just touching on it, the internship aligns with my interests. That right there is another excellent point because again, this is showing a hiring manager that it's not just you applying for a position as a job. You're actually interested in this field, you're interested in certain aspects of it. And as you will see in the second line, that she actually wants to go on a certified financial planner career track after graduation. So again, these are things that are very, very clear to a hiring manager to say, I'd like to speak with this applicant because this is someone who shows general interest, not only in our company with the areas that they're touching on, but as personal career track interests. This is someone who we want to meet. One last point I want to make about cover letters. This example had 3 paragraphs. You can actually have a shorter version. I've seen very good cover letters with 1 paragraph and some with 2. So you don't have to have it this long and extensive for it to still be effective. I just want to give you some sort of parameters for what is going to be helpful for you when writing it and what's acceptable to the hiring manager. 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs, max 3, you should be fine. All right. Now, let's talk a couple of minutes about your resume itself. We have this slide because it's essentially a resume with the same exact information side by side, so you can see the comparison. The information on the left and the right has sort of 4 blocks to them. The first section on the top is the contact information, your name, address, your phone number, your email. That is what you want to have at the beginning of your resume. Your middle portion will then flow into what kind of work experience that you can share. I suggest also having a volunteer or personal interests or pro bono. You can label them in any of those ways after your work experience, because again, this is another area of how might you be able to elaborate more on experience or skills that you may have that you can bring to the company, but it's not from a job that you actually had. So work experience, you can then add volunteer and then put your education below that. And I strongly urge you to have a skills section because that's something that will be quickly reviewed by the hiring manager to see, well, what do you include in your skills section? Technology is a very big deal right now. You want to make sure that you include, if you have software experience, clearly Microsoft Office Suite is very, very commonly used, whether it's Office, Word, if it's Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, those are sort of key components to writing letters or writing correspondence, putting information together, charts, graphs, putting any kind of presentations together. These are really core skills that you really want to include. If you have experience with, Google Docs, Google Suite, video chats, anything that's tied to software that you've used at firms or at school that's relatable or helpful with your experience. Include that. Now, as far as the formatting goes, you can see that having a template that's graphically designed has a much cleaner and polished presentation than without it. So, and we see both of these types of resumes all the time. As you can see side by side, it's much more easy to read, it's much better organized, and it flows easier top to bottom when a hiring manager is reading it. And that's what you want. You want to make it easy to read. Many hiring managers literally get hundreds of resumes all the time. So they're kind of plowing through a stack, as many as they can probably squeeze in. And it's going to be a much different way of receiving the information when you put it on a more beautifully formatted template. So definitely look at how you can improve your presentation from going to just having copy to being able to drop it into a template that's going to look much nicer. Build your resume using action-oriented verbs. Now, the reason why this is a suggestion is in your section, when you have your bullets for here's the work that you've done, you can start it off just saying, whatever it was that you did without an action verb, but it kind of takes it up a notch or two when you use an action verb. So if you use words like I created something, I designed something, I developed something, I formed something, these give a little bit more clarity that that was something that you did on your own. You designed it, you created it, you built it, you improved upon it. And that is going to be much more polished, and it's going to read much better. So think about what are some of the things that you've done when you look on your list of tasks maybe that you've done or worked at, and how can you maybe use it in a cleaner, tighter way, if you will, using an action verb. So I wanted to give you some specific ideas. This is where I want to help you with your creative thought process. If you have done work, whether it's at a job or at school or volunteer with other people as a team, teams are incredibly helpful for a environment in a financial planning firm or a company that has departments, it has teams that you're looking to be a part of, that you're looking to join. So if you can mention or refer to working in a team environment, let's say if you are doing something with a club at school, or you've worked on a project for one of your classes and there were 4 team members. Well, what was your area that you were responsible for? What were the things that you did as part of your team? And how can you add that as an example of a experience that you can add to your resume? So I put, just as an idea, created step-by-step instructions for a team project to improve consistency with the group. Now, this is just for you to think about, were the things that you did to kind of pull things together. Also, if you've done volunteer work, same concept, same idea. Volunteer to develop a social media campaign for a youth group or organization, club. You would name whatever the organization or club is, or the group, but the goal is you're demonstrating it was volunteer work, so it wasn't paid, but it was still showing that you have experience and you came up with an idea, or maybe you had an idea that was presented to you, but then you actually put that idea into action. Last example, developed how to use Google Suite apps, reference materials for training purposes. Now, it's really, again, the same type of idea. Maybe there was something that you were involved with and you were trying to help other people in your group to also learn how to do it. So give yourself some ideas on what are some of the things that you've done with teams or groups or small settings that you contributed, and how did you help to put that into explanation of a example of a skill that you earned or that you've learned that the hiring manager can see. Customize your resume for each job. The reason why I have this here is this is sort of an ongoing issue that I've noticed. A lot of the time, we can review resumes and it looks like it's for a different position. And I realized that it may be one resume that was created, and then the person is just using it for everything that they're applying for. And that's really not ideal. It's hard to be able to have a one size fits all resume. So you really want to make sure that you're creating a resume that speaks to the hiring manager. Remember those ideas that I mentioned earlier on? How do you fit in the organization? Is your information relevant? So if you have a job description that you're looking at, or if you're thinking about what type of skills or roles would you need for, say, a financial planning firm, look more closely at, well, what are the types of roles or positions, job descriptions that are available? Ask yourself what kind of experience that you have that can actually be relevant to those job requirements. And then how should you update your resume to be appropriate for the position you're applying for? So here's an example of how to customize your resume for a position. Look at the job duties, look at the qualifications. Now, this example is really for more of an entry level support person. It could be operation support, administrative support. This could be an example for a financial planning firm, even, who is looking for someone to come in and observe and learn and support with someone who is helping to support a department or a team. So have you done anything with arranging meetings? Have you done anything with helping to organize scheduling or working on project calendars? Have you ever helped with any kind of support coordination for meetings? That's a very common thing to be helpful with, saying, yes, I've been able to put together information for a team project that we're working on, or that you've worked on. I mean, what kind of information did you include? Was it, an agenda? Was it a schedule of what the project was going to cover and who was going to be talking? Is it a PowerPoint? These are all ways that they fit in with highlighting skills that you have that might fit this particular type of job description. And then, of course, what are your qualifications? This is where I was referring to your skills. Technology is always going to be looked upon very favorably. If you're low tech, that's okay too. But the more that you can help to see that you've had some introduction or some usage in software that a lot of companies use, the more favorable it will be. Avoid having irrelevant information. This is also an area that sometimes commonly happens, that you may have skills that are not necessarily appropriate for the position that you're applying for. I always suggest only focus on what's relevant for this role and don't worry about the rest, because it's not what the hiring manager is looking for. So if you're applying for a position that has to do with finance or financial planning, You don't need to talk about anything that you've done in the past that's will seem a little random, dog walking or other types of work that you may have done, which was fine for you to do those kinds of jobs. And, it served its purpose, but you just don't need to include it on your resume unless you are actually hoping that that would fit in with the position. So irrelevant, keep it off your resume, and certainly don't list any reasons for leaving a position. When you have on there started, stopped, you just don't need to have anything in those details. You can answer any questions in an interview if that is brought up. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the resume itself and the length. If it's entry level, try to focus on the quality of your accomplishments. So, again, you have limited work experience that you can elaborate on, and that's okay. But let's say you've done work in retail before. Let's say you worked in food services. Well, that would mean that it's highly likely you worked with customers. So here's just an example. Even if you are indicating that you worked with customers, maybe were there things that you can speak to that maybe you helped to solve customer problems, or there were ways that you were able to assist in certain um, situations that were really helpful for helping the customers feel happy or satisfied. Those are considered accomplishments where you recognized by the company for being, employee of the month, or where you acknowledged for um, having great skills, and maybe you had some kind of accolades from the company. That's what you want to include as accomplishments. Condense your information. Make sure that you're just really giving the main descriptive pieces to what you're talking about, including those accomplishments and achievements that you've had in the past. Were you ever recognized for any kinds of help with community service, or anything that was tied to your clubs or volunteer work that you've done? That's what is helpful to have included. Use impressive achievements as opposed to a long, long list of things. Usually, one page is usually customary, but if you have 2 pages, it is fine for your resume length, but only if it's relevant. If if you don't have a lot of information, just keep it to 1 page. And just as a tip, I suggest using either 3 or 4 bullets per position that you're listing, and be consistent. The flow of your resume will usually be formatted much more cleanly if you have the same number of bullets per position that you're listing as your work experience. So there's also what I like to call red flags. The red flags are what are glaring issues to a hiring manager. Number one always is typos and spelling errors. That is by far going to be, I'll call it a deal breaker with a hiring manager seeing typos in your resume. I've literally had very bright, very enthusiastic applicants in conversation interviews that had typos that were on the resume, and they had to fix them before they could be submitted, because we literally had hiring managers tell us that they had seen resumes in the past with typos and they immediately decline. So make sure that you check it when you're creating your resume. I always say the first day, just it's a draft. Whatever it is you put together, it's not your final version. Put your information together on a resume. Make sure you have it as clean and tight as possible, and then save it. Look at it again the next day, read it again, fresh set of eyes. You will catch errors. You will see formatting errors, you'll see spacing errors, you may even catch some typos, but do not send a resume out that has typos. Make sure you follow whatever directions that you are getting. Also, if you are going for an in-person resume, then you need to take printed copies with you, hard copies. Even if you uploaded and the resume that you had submitted was sent to the firm, that's why they reached out and said, we want to interview you. But if you have a physical in-office interview, you absolutely should have several hard copies of your resumes with you. Make sure they're clean, they're crisp, they're on good, strong paper, a little bit heavier than 20-pound copy paper. Make sure there's no stains on them, food stains, they're not crumpled or bent in any way. It's all a reflection of showing that you are polished and professional and you care. If you have employment gaps on your resume, maybe you didn't work for 2 years in between jobs, what happened? How would you explain the gaps? You should address them on your resume because it's going to stand out that there were 2 years. What happened? Now, if you decided that you needed to focus on your studies, you didn't want to work any longer, maybe that's when you can have some volunteer work that happened during that 2 year gap period or whatever the gap is. But make sure that it's clear on your resume. If there are big gaps, how are you going to address them? Avoid the poor formatting. You saw the contrast side by side. It's absolutely going to be much more appealing for a nice graphically designed template to have your resume delivered versus centered, off centered, just not as professional presentation. And make sure you do not have any unnecessary information because, quite honestly, that's going to really detract from the good information that you're including. And then the hiring manager is sort of lukewarm instead of being very excited about scheduling an interview with you. So just another snapshot of an example of a resume that had the name have a completely different font and color than from the rest of the resume. There's red, email and work experience and just inconsistencies with the format and the flow of the resume. I've actually seen resumes that have different colors going on, or there even sometimes it's too much color, too much competing information, and it takes away from the words, the descriptions, the professional image. So be very, very, I'll call it somewhat reserved. It's nice to have good polish and even nicely designed, but you want it to be as easy to read and attractive as possible because the hiring manager is really going to be kind of comparing how well yours flows with a stack of resumes that they're also going through at the same time. So I gave you a lot of information to digest. Any questions that we have at this point?
While we're waiting for those questions to come in, Suzanne, I just want to thank you again for the time you took to present this. This was great material. And as a reminder to anybody that got here a little late or is watching, Applications are now being accepted for BLX, so feel free to submit those online on our website, blxinternship.org. You can also find more information about upcoming webinars visiting our events page. So we hope to see you guys there. Looks like we don't have anything coming in yet, but I thought that was great, Suzanne. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And since we have a couple of quick minutes, oh, do I see a couple of Q&A?
Okay, here we go. All right, Vanessa asks, what font and text size should we use in resumes?
I usually suggest going with something like Arial or Calibri. Even Cambria is nice. Times Roman is fine, but it's a little bit sort of, you know, really super basic. It just looks a little nicer if it's a little bit cleaner and a little more interesting. So I would just go with one of those and see how you like it. If it looks like it's too narrow, maybe add the bold face, feature to it, because they usually have a lighter version and then the bold face version. Or you can kind of play around and have, your titles that have the bold and then everything else that's unbolded. That's another easy way to just have a contrast of bold versus unbold. But I would say those are three probably good fonts to use. I would go with either 11 points or 12-point font size and see just how that looks. Sometimes you can actually use 12, sometimes even 14 for your heading titles, and then the information underneath it can go down to 11 or 12. So you're giving a little bit more kind of depth to how it's going to present on paper.
I think that's great. That makes sense. I feel like there's a fine line between making it stand out a little bit and creating that definition between sections and keeping it very professional and uniform and concise. So that's perfect. One more question came in. For career changers, how do they not age themselves on a resume?
The first thing I would say is nothing goes on the resume before 2000. That is a common way that it immediately shows, okay, I've been in the workforce since, 1989 or whatever the date is. It's really just reflection of the hiring manager probably will feel a little more comfortable if you are a career changer, but you're showing like a 20-year history. That's fine. But anything before that, take it off.
Okay, perfect. One more question. Tia asks, if you have extensive work experience, is it still recommended to only go back 10 years for work experience? And additionally, is it not recommended to use a different resume format that starts with a summary, then areas of expertise, instead of listing jobs with dates and education? What do you think?
Okay, so you asked for 10. I gave you permission to go back to 20 years as far as how far back to go. 10 is fine, but a lot of people have more than 10 years experience. So it's fine to have more than 10 years, to be completely honest. It's really, and we've helped and gotten plenty of career changers hired, to be 100% honest, because the career changer, opportunity is someone who's already used to going to work, getting up, being on time, understanding, sort of workplace protocols, if you will. So it's fine to have between 10 to 20 years. I would just say, just don't go past that. You absolutely can start with a opening. I like to call it more of an objective as opposed to a summary, because summary tells me it's going to be super wordy. And you really are trying to have a snapshot of what is it that your goal is for your resume to get that next position. So I would rephrase it to or reframe it, have a objective as your opening, no more than 3 sentences. Your summary, it sounds like, is almost like a little bit of your story. That story goes on your cover letter, and that's really where you would want to give that snapshot about yourself and what it is that you're looking to do and why the position that you're applying for resonates with you.
Perfect. Very good. All good questions. We'll give it a minute to see if anything else pops up.
And I did want, if we had a couple of quick minutes, I did want to share we will be sending a checklist after today's presentation. So this is just so you can see what's going to be on the checklist as sort of a refresher for you for what it is that you should be including on your cover letter. So here's some tips for you to have to refer back to. Make sure you're going to, customize that cover letter to each of the positions that you would be applying for. Highlight your achievements, your skills and experiences, provide specific examples that you may want to include to demonstrate the type of experience that you've had. Um, Absolutely, positively proofread your cover letter from beginning to end. I always say top to bottom. Don't just look in the middle, top to bottom. Make sure it's easy to read. Divide it into 2 paragraphs, maximum 3, and certainly try to avoid repeating information that you're putting in your cover letter and then you're putting it in your resume. Um, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you. All helpful. Tough to generate a resume. What was that, Leisha?
Yeah, Atia just commented that's all really
Oh,
helpful. It's tough to generate a resume when you have several job specialists and HR professionals with different recommendations. So I feel like this is good. She liked that.
oh, good. Okay. That's good to know. And honestly, just remember, try not to be all things for everyone, because that's just not a good way for you to organize your thoughts and focus. So look at it from the perspective of what's really important. What is it that the hiring manager really is looking for out of your cover letter and your resume? And just go with what really is going to be important for you to be able to focus on. On your resume itself, try to make sure you're using a template. If you don't know how to do that, ask someone who you know has, because who has access or experience, because this is pretty common now to have templates that we can use. Make sure your font selection is desirable. Have your contact information at the top. Use only relevant work experience. Have your education. I'm also inserting, don't forget, work experience and volunteer experience, because both of those can really also kind of shine a light on what you're doing personally as well as professionally. You complementing your skills. Highlight your skills, your accomplishments, use your action verbs, customize your resume to fit the job description, and update your resume based on each application that you are submitting for. Remember, it can be 1 pages or 2, and absolutely positively proofread for typos and grammatical errors. That is going to be key.
Perfect. We have a few more questions we're going to run through really quick. Yolanda asks, is it best to quantify what you've done on a resume? For example, I created a training program to help 300 student workers.
Absolutely. I would say just, help the reader to understand what kind of training program it was it. Was it, how to do, how to find a job, or was it for something that was tied to an academic topic? Was it how to use, software? Like, just give a snapshot of what type of training it was that you were providing.
Very good. Yeah, be specific. One more question. Is there a way to show on your resume that you are pursuing or interested in getting the CFP designation, but you've not completed the education requirement? From the CFP board website, it seems that we can only put candidate for CFP if you've completed all education items first.
You can put the information in your education section that you are pursuing the CFP coursework, something, that implies that this is something that you are actively doing. If the rules are, that you can't put CFP candidate unless you've actually completed your coursework. I think that might be a newer, I don't know if that's a newer rule that they have, but if it is, then I would just suggest pursuing CFP coursework. And if you would like to even indicate, when you think you might, complete it, projection completed in 2025 or something like that. It's just to kind of have an indication that this is something that you are interested in. If you've started the coursework, maybe, is it Kaplan? Is it, at one of the well-known schools that you want to refer to, that's fine too. But I think that it still will be helpful information for a hiring manager to see that information.
Absolutely. As well as putting on a resume, do you feel like that would be something you could designate on your cover letter as well? Like add that as part of your story?
Absolutely. And why? Why does this interest you? Is this the career track that you would like to pursue? Because that's honestly what the firm's hiring managers want to know. Because they're looking for people who specifically want to work their way from coming in even as an intern to becoming an associate advisor and learning the work there, sometimes learning the financial planning component of it, and then moving into becoming a advisor at some point. So you just know that this is important to what hiring managers like to see, and you kind of go into a special pile of possibilities, and certainly that will gain the interest to have interviews as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's something that we've seen with firms that are looking to hire. They love the interns that have that intention of pursuing that CFP. So communicating that would be so valuable. Absolutely.
And bear in mind, the firms that we work with at BLX, they mostly are run by CFPs. They're partners, they're the founders, they're, the top executives. And, so sort of the culture is a planning culture. And that's why that track is very appealing for them when they're bringing in young talent or new talent into the firm. So just keep that in mind, that that's very much sort of the common thread if you're applying. By the way, the cohort that we're going into next year, we absolutely are hearing from more and more interns from previous cohort interns how they are now getting their CFPs. So we're very excited that we're seeing now from 2021, the first summer how people are now showing us on LinkedIn their certification degrees and certificates that they completed their coursework and they passed their exams. So we would love to know if this is something that you're interested in. We absolutely will help you to be supported with all kinds of ways of, getting you connected with getting into firms as well as other training opportunities and webinars that BLX offers to everyone who applies.
Perfect. This next question is really interesting. Can you explain how AI impacts resume submissions, and do hiring managers use AI?
Well, I would just safely say this: AI is just a part of how technology is moving forward. Okay.
Mhm.
Whether or not people are raising their hand to say, we're using AI here or not is a completely separate thing. It is new, people are embracing it, but it is changing the way that work is being done. And I would just say for you that if you are considering or contemplating how to use AI as far as your resume goes, just make sure your information is very much your information. That seems to be very much the gray area right now. You would probably cringe if you used AI as a reliable source for you to create your resume and then it was submitted and literally the hiring managers get hundreds of resumes. So I would just be very careful about how much you're relying on AI to create a resume top to bottom. I think that it's good for ideas on how things might be worded, but I would really just be careful about what it is that you would want to be able to deliver and make sure that it's authentic.
Absolutely. Maybe you can touch a little bit more about how hiring managers are using AI. I know for a lot of the larger organizations, they're using AI technology to kind of help them vet through the resumes to begin with. Suzanne is definitely part of our team that helps us go through our resumes. So maybe she can elaborate a little bit more about, do we use that technology? Are they going to get disqualified if something's not on there, if AI doesn't pick it up? I know that's been a concern for some of the applicants.
Think it's important that you think of keywords and phrases because if there is an AI component to how hiring managers are using it, it's still going to tie into keywords and phrases. Are you using words and phrases that are relevant to the planning profession? Are you using the types of skills that are helpful for planning? I think you also just need to, be mindful that some companies may be more open-minded to it than others. We absolutely are seeing a range of how people are beginning to embrace it. I've seen maybe more so with coming up with job descriptions and things that might have taken more time in that capacity for, what is it that they want to have as part of sort of the updated information that is now being done as opposed to what was done last year or what needed to be refreshed. So I would just say honestly that all of this is completely evolving and we're just at the beginning of it. We're at the forefront of it. I wish I had one, this is how it is for everyone answer, but I don't because literally companies are literally determining what's the best way for them to use AI.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the questions we have. I know we're getting close to time, so if you guys have anything else to ask, I'm going to put our email address in the chat so you can send us messages there. And again, a recording of this webinar will be sent out along with the handouts and attachments that Suzanne mentioned. So we just want to thank you again, Suzanne, for your time. We really appreciate you presenting this great information to us. And yeah, thank you guys all for being here.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you all for being here. If you are planning on applying to the program, we look forward to receiving your application hopefully soon. And if you have questions, do not hesitate to ask. Certainly email the info at BLX information internship.org information that Alicia just put in the chat, and we all absolutely wish you all much success in your journey.
Very good. Vanessa is asking really quickly, are applications being reviewed as they come in? I know you will be contacted by Advisor Business Solutions after your applications are sent in.
Yes.
Suzanne, maybe you can elaborate that really quickly.
Yes, we actually have about within a 1 week turnaround from when the applications come in, you'll receive an automated response acknowledging we have your application on file. We'll be back to you shortly. And then we reach out after just reviewing everything to make sure everything is included. And we'll let you know, we would like to schedule a time to meet, and they send a scheduling link to you. So it's really right. What we're seeing now is we're responding within a week. And now it's really up to the individual applicants to schedule to get on one of the calendars of one of the interviewers. So that seems to be taking a little bit longer than the actual response back to applicants once you've submitted. So you will hear from us pretty quickly.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again, Suzanne, and thank you everyone for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You too. Thanks, everyone.